Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of In Conversation. And of course, this is an episode that is insightful as we are going to be tackling some of the political standpoints that the country is facing at this point. My name is Bongani Mncube, and joining me, Umpangazita, to talk more about our current political landscape. And I'm talking about Prof. Isaac Khambule. Prof, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Mncube, and thank you for the invite. Thank you so much. Yeah.
It is, trust me, it's been long coming, as the country came from the elections, we've been wanting to understand what is really happening in our country right now. Of course, we're going to delve into it, but for the audience, Prof, would you kindly introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. So I'm Professor Isaac Khambule. I'm with the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg, where I teach international political economy and also serve as the coordinator for the doctoral program within the department.
I think for me, usually to start personally, has politics always been an interest of yours?
No, it has. It has. But for some reason, it's always been philosophy, politics, and economics. I mean, can remember since I was young, I was always preoccupied by one question that used to make me walk for miles, just thinking about life. And the key question was, is it possible for everything to stop and be standstill in life and not to think about anything? So from there on, I think I developed this idea of wanting to inquire more about life as we know it, and as well as many other things in terms of the facets of life. And then as years went by, I mean, even from high school, I thought I was going to be a freedom fighter. That's why, so that's why I took history, I think, in grade 9.
Okay.
So then going to grade 10, I had learned a lot about the likes of Steve Biko, about slavery. So I saw myself as a freedom fighter. Then I was like, I want to continue doing history until I finish so that I can go to Parliament. Fortunately, I'm not in Parliament. I'll definitely say fortunately. No, I think I've taken a better career route than being in politics, and I think this gives you an opportunity to serve people in a manner that is significant and also tries to improve the lives of those who are struggling on a daily basis.
Well, I think for you not to be part of Parliament, I think, because we think those are the big people in society, key makers, but of course, still I'm intrigued that you at a better position, to be able to teach politics and to be also to analyze politics. Well, you've done so many research and publications. What are some of the key themes and findings in your work?
So the main themes in terms of the work that I normally do are in relation to the state and development, because that's one thing that I'm very much passionate about. I want to understand how then the state relates to development. How does the state ensure that we get development in the country? How does the state ensure that the distribution of goods and services in the country are also going to prioritize those who are poor? Because the political economy element then comes in, because in the distribution of those particular resources, there are certain economic benefits, and then in most cases we live in a capitalist system. The capital wants to control how those resources are distributed, and in most cases, if they do get to control them, it basically means that those who do not have any resources or do not have any means get lesser distribution of those resources. So that's where the political economy element then comes in, as to what should then be the nature and the role of the state in terms of addressing the imbalances between what the economy wants and what the social needs of people are.
And of course, the state now has, from the elections, the South African state has kind of changed. There's with this term that you did mention that is a little bit controversial at this point, but the government of national unity. How do you define it personally?
So the government of national unity is definitely an important term for our context currently, and our context again back in 1994, because you'll recall that after the first election, after the first democratic election in 1994, South Africa, despite the ANC gaining the majority in terms of the votes, but yet they opted to have a government of national unity because they saw it as a transitional government that will then address the historical injustices and also ensure that there is some sort of cohesion between the old guard in terms of the apartheid era
Yes.
and those within the apartheid era who wanted to transition to a democratic society, so that to ensure that they are not left out within the new government that was going to be introduced. So in that particular case, the government of national unity again becomes a government that is mainly focused on unifying the entire nation. Because you understand there are certain discords, there are certain disconnections that often happen, and then in order to unify the idea that the likes of former Nelson Mandela came up with, or the late Nelson Mandela, was that of a rainbow nation. And again, it was a nation that was going to encompass of all citizens from all walk of life. Whether you are black, whether you are white, whether you are any color or creed, the idea is that you need to be part of this national sense of unity that we are trying to constitute. So in this case, as we see it now, because the African National Government failed to, the African National Congress, for the case, failed to garner enough seats needed to form a government on its own. For the first time in 30 years, basically meant that they needed to form some form of coalition government with other parties. But then the idea for them to form a national government of unity then was also an idea to say, we did not get the outright majority. So it's very important then that we ensure that everyone has a voice in this type of government that we are forming, so that everyone can have a say and people could feel very much being a part of this government for the first time in 30 years in South Africa.
Like the power dynamics become a challenge. I know there are benefits and challenges. I think maybe for start, we can start with challenges that come with this, because we're having people from different political parties being united. Of course, unity is what we want, but they differ in terms of policies and what the parties stand for. So at this point, what challenges are we facing?
There's quite a lot of challenges, I must say, because I think most of people often think that it was going to be easy in terms of forming the government of national unity, because I think you'd recall, as soon as the election results were announced, you saw a lot of discourses happening within the media, within the streets, whereby people were asking themselves, what is going to happen? Is the ANC going to be more aligned with the radical parties that it portrayed to be at times, or was it going to find some common ground in terms of inviting additional political parties to form a government with? So in this case, they invited the likes of the DA in most cases to say, let's form a government of national unity, including other smaller political parties. And that on its own presented a number of challenges, because if you look at the ideological perspectives between the ANC and the DA, you could tell that there are certain contestations. The DA is pro-liberal, they care more about individual rights, they care more about protecting the establishment in this country, they care more about protecting the needs of those who have. Whereas the ANC on the other side keeps on saying that they are there for the masses, they care more about redistributive policies, they care more about ensuring that each and every citizen in the country is well protected. So that on its own tells you quite a lot. I mean, in a number of ways, whether we are going to focus on issues such as the black economic empowerment. The DA is anti-black economic empowerment. The ANC is pro those policies. You go to energy issues. Some within the ANC are pro the use of coal, and some are saying, no, let's go on with the just transition, of which is more inclined in terms of what the DA wants to do in terms of the energy policies. So that on its own shows you some contestations that are bound to emerge within this government of national unity. And quite recently, as in yesterday, I was reading some of the news articles online, and they show that there are certain, again, forces that are pulling in terms of whether we need to privatize state-owned enterprises or we need to leave them as they are. So that on its own is also bound to bring about certain fragmentation and challenges in terms of what economic policies are we going to pursue. I mean, some of these things go as far as in terms of understanding as to, if I'm a minister and I come from the DA, whose policies am I implementing? Am I implementing the policies that were previously implemented by the ANC? Is it a continuation? Or I'm implementing policies of the DA? So that is bound to be one of the most contested things, because at the end of the day, if there is no consensus on what policies to implement, then people are likely going to implement whatever policies they want to, based on which political parties they come from, instead of unifying it within this government of national unity to say, as the government of national unity, these are the policies that we stand for. So without addressing that particular issue, we are bound to have a lot of fragmentation, and that may as well lead to to some major contestation on probably even the collapse of what we're seeing. Because just yesterday, even the EFF and MK party were proposing the idea of changing Section 25 of the Constitution that has to do with the land issue.
Oh, yes.
So now, that on its own, again, is starting to pit a lot of people in terms of them asking themselves, so on which side is the ANC going to fall on? Because we know for a very fact that the DA wants to ensure that particular Section 25 is not changed. So that on its own brings about many contestations and should be quite exciting to see as to what is going to happen within the first 100 days of this government of national unity.
Especially what you are saying, that which side are you on? Even the president, when he delivered the OPA, you know, there were questions to say, which side are you leaning on? You know, and the historical context is brought to life to say you have sold the dreams of this and that. So it is quite a touchy subject, and we've been seeing what has been happening in Parliament. Questions being asked, but now with that being said, what are some of the benefits that are coming from this? Of course, we're having different parties with different minds, with people that have the country, I think, at their best interest. What really are some of the benefits that we can anticipate from this GNU?
Well, there are certain major benefits. I think one of them is the issue of accountability within the cabinet, because previously, I mean, the ANC was governing on its own, so there was no sort of accountability. That's why even if you look back at the Zuma years and as well as the Ramaphosa years, I mean, I'll take you back to the case of the Nkandla issue. Within Parliament, because the ANC had majority, they were able to use their majority to ensure that particular debates do not continue, that particular policies or decisions are not taken in Parliament. We go back again to the issue of Ramaphosa in terms of Phala Phala. The ANC was also able to use its majority to protect its president. But now we are in uncharted waters as to who knows what is going to happen in terms of accountability within this particular structure. So today it's easier, for example, as you often see that it tends to be the case that if the ANC has a minister, then the deputy minister is likely to come from the DA, of which was formerly the opposition party. So now as to how do you then manage holding each other to account will emerge as one of the key benefits that we are likely to see in this particular case. But that on its own also brings certain concerns, I must say, because just recently there were questions as to how will the DA vote then if the issue of Phala Phala is brought up again. Will they vote to protect a president that they previously said needs to be held accountable? So there are those particular things of which again bring about certain contradictions. But again, most of the benefits here are that many of the policies that would be taken on a consultative basis rather than one party making all the decisions, of which again will bring about accountability. But in as much as we are saying that, there are some people who will say, but that means it will take a longer time for us to pass policies because there need to be particular consensus or negotiations between political parties. And what happens then if the government cannot take any action or policies or policy stances? So that on its own also raises, and in this case, it seems to be the case that in as much as we have a number of benefits that we can derive, these benefits also come with particular challenges, because again, it is for the first time in democratic South Africa whereby we are getting this sort of government of national unity that also is going to shape the direction of where the country is going. But I think the main benefit that has been said or purported in terms of within the media circles is the idea of stability in the country in terms of the financial aspect, to say the rand is going to strengthen, the rand is going to do this and that. So at the end of the day, it also brings us so many questions as to then what happens. Is our government more about strengthening the rand and not actually addressing the needs of the people? So what is it that is at stake at the end of the day? Are we more about saying we want to strengthen the rand, but at what cost? Because those are some of the discussions that we need to be having. Because if we look at this government of national unity, to some extent, it was also forced upon by how markets were going to react. So that conditions you to say, if I go into a coalition with this particular political party, for example, with the EFF, there were many articles saying that it was going to be doomsday in South Africa, the rand is going to collapse. Obviously, you as a citizen or you as a policymaker, you want to go with whoever is going to ensure that the rand strengthens. But the question remains, at what expense? Because this also gives us the very same thing that we had in 1994, to say we are forming a government of national unity. But to what extent and to
Yeah.
what expense. And for me, it also has a particular connotation that we also need to look at.
Okay.
If you are saying to what extent and to what expense, let's address one thing, because no one is talking about the people who are voting,
Yeah, true.
right?
Yeah.
So it seems as if the only right that people have to do, they have, is to vote. But once they cast their votes, they do not have
have
any
a say.
role in terms of influencing what decisions are taken. So it means that the markets then are taking over. And then you ask yourself, what is democracy then in that particular case?
Yeah, it kind of
Right.
blurs the lines in that
it
particular
does.
case. Because, however, of course, we're still having, the likes of PA Gaten Mackenzie coming through saying, I'm sent by this such a number of people. The people believe this. It's pretty concerning that the people are still used as if the numbers are the voice, but not in its entirety, because now the policies come into play. Now it's a decision who gets to bed with who because of this aspiration that we have. Because there was word on the ground of that should the DA not be part of the coalition, the markets will crash, as you said, which is quite concerning. But also, Prof, I want to locate the role now of the new opposition party, which is now the MK and other opposition parties. Of course, this has been internal. The benefits and the advantages, the accountability, the stability, the discussions are now also coming from that government of national unity. But we're still also having pressure, intense pressure from the opposition party. What is their role now in also pushing the country to the right direction?
Well, the opposition parties have an important role to play, I must say.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, the one key thing that they need to do is holding this particular government to account in terms of the policies that it is taking, in terms of the promises that it is making to people, and lastly, again, in terms of the mandates that it has. So in this particular case, as an opposition political party, the MK, including its progressive alliance, has the important task then of saying this is what was promised, and we need to ensure that public money is spent in a manner that is going to be the benefit of the entire population, firstly, because I think that has been one of the key things in relation to corruption in this country, whereby there hasn't been any effective opposition.
Yeah.
And secondly, I think one of the key thing that the opposition party is going to do in this particular case is to ensure that they use whatever cards are at play for themselves. And in this particular case, they are always using a card that says, we are here, we are the custodians of what the African people want.
Yes.
So then how will that particular role they're playing influence the likely outcomes or decisions that are taken in Parliament? Because, for example, parties such as the ANC and other parties such as the Pan-Africanist Congress do not want to be seen to be selling out, of which seems to be the popular thing that is said within many platforms, that these guys are selling out. So what role then does it have in terms of shaping or steering the ANC away from certain policies and adopting policies that are likely to represent its constituents? Because at the end of the day, we understand who are the main constituents of the ANC. And one thing that I often say is that even if you look at these parties such as your MK, who gained a lot of votes unexpectedly,
True.
but those are votes in a sense that belong to the ANC. They are by virtue and extension of the ANC. It's just a different faction that did not make it within the ANC. So within the political economy of such then, what role then does this have in terms of influencing what policies are being made within the ANC? Because we've also seen that there are those who are coming out publicly disagreeing, who are within the ANC disagreeing with some of the policy decisions that the ANC is taking, the likes of Andile Lungisa. So that on its own shows that in as much as there's some sort of unit within the ANC, there are certain fragmentations that are developing, and it is only a guess as to how long will it take then for the ANC to fully mobilize and unify or break apart in terms of decision making. Wow. So that on its own has a huge impact on the role that is played by these opposition parties, who then also seek to say, we want to take those votes away from the ANC because they failed you as the majority of the African population. Then bring your votes to us. And as we are heading to the 2026 local government elections, that on its own is going to be one of the hotly contested ideologies that are going to be at play.
And Prof, this one is for me. I want to take this opportunity since I have you here. I bumped into something. Is it the Progressive Caucus? Well, what is that about?
So it's the Progressive Alliance Caucus of the. So it's mainly the MK, it's the EFF, it's the AIC. So they are calling themselves the Progressive Alliance because they believe their policies are progressive compared to what policies that the ANC is currently wanting to take within the government of national unity. So they stand then as this bloc that says we are anti what the ANC is doing or what this current government is doing. So we are the ones who are going to come up with progressive policies that would basically improve the lives of the poor or those who have lesser resources. So that's on its own as to how far it will go in terms of the unity that we see within that progressive alliance. It still remains because this is what they're doing now. But come the local government elections, they won't be singing the same hymn because then the idea is we need to contest each other for this particular vote.
And then reunite at the table for more after the outcome. And the people are at the epicenter of it all to happen. People are endorsing those parties. And some of the concerns that have been arising from the GNU, as we can see that, let's take the president of the DA, Prof. Stein Hazen. There's been the concerns of that people who are educated. So I want to locate academia and politics. People who are more qualified, more skilled, more educated are deputizing people maybe that are less academically skilled. What's your take on that? It seems like academics is still really playing a pivotal role in our society, and we're still having that debate at the big level of the country because those are the policymakers. We expect a certain thinking capacity, critical thinking, certain level of understanding.
Well, I think that there is definitely a controversial one. Because if you look at the element of education, it's always used against one group of people, right? So it's about how educated African or black people are in order to hold particular positions. But as soon as it is someone from the, I'd say, the white race, that's a particular discussion that does not happen. And I can definitely say that this has been ingrained and entrenched within South Africa because it goes as far. For example, you've seen, I think recently, even the likes, so I think it's Polly, someone who's a journalist who said, I'm willing even to debate with Advocate Dalimpof in front of a judge. I'm willing to even debate with the entire EF. But then if you look at the qualifications of such people, it shows that they are not in the same level to even debate with that particular person. But based on how we've entrenched this idea that qualifications only need to come into play if you as an African person are in the discussion. But if it has to do with another race, then qualifications do not matter. And as you've rightly indicated in terms of this case, if you look at the Minister of Public Works compared to the Deputy Minister of Public Works, Sihle Zikalala, in terms of education, Sihle Zikalala has a master's and he's been doing well in terms of leading. And now he's deputizing someone who does not even have such formal qualifications, and yet again, not just formal qualifications, even leading experience in terms of leadership. What have they led before? Nothing, right?
True.
Now all of a sudden they're coming into a key portfolio and they have someone who is well experienced reporting under them, and that on its own should tell you that we do not have our priorities set in the right order, and it is something that within the ANC they were supposed to really address, because you cannot afford to have such structures or such capacities being undermined, because it goes back again to the idea of reinforcing superiority over inferiority in this particular context. And what does it say then to the next person who's looking at this? What does it say to someone who wants to be employed? So it gives them a particular negative narrative that says you do not need, or you are not supposed to be in certain levels despite your qualifications. So it's definitely a concerning one.
Yeah, it is. And looking at it, of course, as to how you have said, Prof, for me it plays that pivotal role. As I've been watching Parliament recently, I learned that budget is not really automatic. You don't just get budget. You need to present. You need to pitch. You need to actually state the reasons why you need such, and with that level, the dynamics of the education and all, do you think it comes in as a disadvantage should maybe a person be not academically qualified to be able to present a strong argument and a strong case to be given a budget that can assist the specific department that they've been assigned to and represent the people as to they have stated?
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. But I think in this particular case, the one advantage that is often there is that it is not these ministers or these leaders that then determine the budget, but they normally have people who are working behind the scenes, such as your director generals, who are able then to look at the portfolio that the particular ministry has,
Yes.
and then makes a needs basis or analysis in terms of understanding how much is needed in order for us to make the necessary impact that we want to make. And then they often then give those particular speeches to the minister, then who then goes into parliament and then tables their budget.
Yeah.
But as you've rightly indicated, if you do get a minister that is unable to even look at these particular reports or read them extensively, then it is bound to be an issue, because the culture is in parliament, whatever document you have, when you go there to present it, doesn't mean that you must read it word for word. You must have it up here. You must understand what it means. So then, all of a sudden, if you get someone who's going to look at the speech and read it word for word, then it becomes a particular issue, because it means they are not thoroughly prepared, or secondly, they cannot even comprehend the magnitude of what they are presenting. And then you ask yourself, then what will be your capabilities in terms of leading that particular department or ministry in a manner that is going to respond to some of the national goals.
Indeed, true. And of course, Prof, the GNU is coming into play in a society whereby we have lots of economic problems that needs to be addressed. In your view, what are some of the key economic challenges that the country is facing and needs urgent addressing by the GNU?
I think a major thing is unemployment. I mean, we teach at the end of the day, and we expect the students that we teach to go out there and become employable. But in the current socio-economic landscape, we know that if I'm teaching 100 students, there's a likelihood that 90 of them are not even going to be employed the following year. So, if without the government really coming up with effective policies to address the issue of unemployment, particularly youth unemployment, because of which it's over 60%, and that tells you that we are facing a grave challenge if majority of people who are the main labor workforce are not within jobs, then the country cannot be as productive. And secondly, I think a huge one is, how do we then create massive employment that is going to ensure that these people are employed in a manner that they get decent wages to also support their families, of which will likely have a huge impact in terms of the country's poverty rate, of which is sitting at 55.5%. So that tells you something, that in order for us to really do something, we need to ensure that people are employed. And how do we then ensure that people are employed? It is through effective policies that are going to incentivize those who want to create employment or new businesses. But another key thing that I would definitely say is that we cannot divorce the issue of poverty from unemployment again, because people are poor because they're unemployed. So if we are able to address that. And then the third issue is the scourge of inequality. It is something that we often look at and do not want to pay attention to. But it is the one thing that is likely to lead a revolution tomorrow. The more those who have get richer, and those who are poor are getting poorer. It is likely to be the case that people will likely revolt against that particular system. How do we then resolve that particular system? And that is one of the key things that we really need to address, because wherever you look at it, the face of poverty is the black child, right? And the face of richness is the white person. So how do we then address these racial inequalities? And in most cases, these racial inequalities, based on statistics, 74% of them are emerging from labor market inequalities, right? So if I work and I'm unable to get paid the same as a particular person of a particular race, it is likely to increase the racial inequality. So how do we then effectively come up with policies that are going to address those particular issues. But in the South African context, it becomes something that is within the realm of political economy, because it becomes contentious as to what policies can we actually have within public or private entities that are going to enforce transparency in terms of pay scales. So that becomes one of the key things that we also need to address. And then lastly, I think the issue of crime. Crime is going out of hand in this country. We see it on a daily basis. Other people are getting killed, people are getting mugged. We see a lot of things happening, and the country is becoming unsafe. And then the issue is, how do we then make the country safer for all its citizens? Because it can't be that those who are rich are the ones who are supposed to feel safer in their neighborhoods, whereas those who are poor are not feeling safe. How do we then redistribute resources to ensure that those who are poor also get the very same protection that those who are rich are getting in their neighborhoods?
Yeah. And well said, Prof. Recently, the youth, I'm also now touched by the issue of the youth, of course, with the employment, and the youth is the future. So speaking to a recent statement by the MP, Naledi Chirwa, who stated that the youth is in a state of becoming. You know, they play a pivotal role. What can today's youth also do to try and make sure that their future is in good hands, is secure? What kind of pressure can they exert to this GNU to make sure that their interests are also put up front?
I would definitely say that the most important thing for the youth is to be entrepreneurial. I mean, wherever you go, it is through being entrepreneurial that you are likely to change your socio-economic conditions, that you are even likely to change the dynamics that you are facing in your country. But the youth cannot be entrepreneurial in the current environment if we know that opportunities are not based on merits, but they are based on who you know. Right? So even some of the youth that have some of the most amazing business proposals, they are likely not going to get funding because they do not have particular connections that will ensure that their proposal or their business ventures get the kind of support that they need. So it becomes then very important for the states to build about effective incentives for the youth to be entrepreneurial. We can even start a youth fund that says, I'm targeting the youth that wants to be business people. What type of businesses do they want to start? What kind of supporting mechanisms can I put in place to ensure that those particular businesses do not fail, but they strive so that they can create more employment? So that is what is currently needed in this country. And until it's such a time whereby we are able to come up with effective incentives for the youth to be entrepreneurial, to start their own businesses, and then also offer them market access, we are unlikely to address the major upheavals that we are seeing in terms of the socio-economic conditions.
And that would be really a big step in terms of eradicating unemployment
Definitely.
and poverty. More jobs are created. And indeed. Well, also, Prof, the country, South Africa, is not really in a vacuum. It exists in a global context. Have you maybe understood the atmosphere or the reception of this GNU to the world? Because we are part of certain committees. We are part of a lot of things that are happening in your BRICS and the UN. You know, we are part of a lot of things. What is the atmosphere and the reception of our GNU?
Well, I'll definitely say that it has been well received, especially through global markets, because I think those global markets tend to have an important role in shaping the kind of policies that a country adopts. So in this particular case, because of the quasi-neoliberal and as well, I'd say much liberalized idea of where we need to go, then the entire global economy is opening up and warming up to the idea of South Africa as an investment destination. But we also need to ask ourselves then as to what further policies can we implement to take advantage of that particular openness that the globe is currently undertaking towards South Africa? And in this particular case, again, it also becomes very important to ask ourselves as to, within the current government of national unity, to what extent are we going to see stability as we go forward? Because there are many issues. I mean, there's an issue of the Israeli and Palestinian genocide. That's on its own has a huge impact on where South Africa stands. Recently, there was a judgment that basically affirmed that Israel is indeed an apartheid state.
Yes.
What does it mean then for the kind of government that we've created? Because we have people who are pro-Israel and then the ANC, which is anti-Israel, if I may put it like that. So this on its own is going to have a huge impact as to what are some of these codes that are happening within the government of national unity right now. And in addition to this, again, you also look at the global reconfiguration that is happening across the globe.
Yes.
Even the US right now is currently reviewing its stance and in relation to South Africa. What is going to be the likely outcome of that, and how will it then impact the entire economy as we see it?
Yes.
For now, it's still going to be an open debate until such a time whereby we really need to tackle some of these particular issues.
And with that being said, what do you think are some of the factors in terms of kind of like ensuring success for this GNU and retaining good relations with the global world and also serving its citizens the way that they should?
I think the most important thing is reciprocal recognition within those in the GNU.
Yeah.
Because without them being able to respect each other, we are bound to get a government that is unable to deliver services, a government that is unable to even take particular policy stances or actions.
Yeah.
And this also goes again within the global context to say reciprocal recognition is important because it means South Africa's sovereignty must also be respected within the international community. If South Africa takes a particular decision within the international community, it doesn't mean that they need to be punished because it is their right to take that particular decision. So why should be in the case whereby the US needs to review its relation to this particular country unless we are saying that our sovereign policy then must be determined by another state, of which makes no sense, right? So these are some of the key things that to say recognition should go all the way in from the domestic level to the international level so that countries will be able to pursue their national interests.
Yes. And bringing it back domestically, we are in the education space. The GNU also plays a pivotal role in terms of where our education is going, in terms of the policies. We're at a digital level now, digital era. Are we incorporating that? And of course, we have challenges within the education system in terms of budget. Tuition is still expensive for other students. We still have high inequality, as you mentioned. How then can the GNU go about, particularly the education sector, how then can it try to assist and also serve the people of this country who seek education as it is a basic need?
I think, again, that is going to be one of the most contested things because if you look at the policy that the ANC is advocating for in terms of higher education compared to what the DA is advocating for, that shows you major conflict. But I would say that the most important thing is South Africa needs to get to a point whereby we try to align our education priorities with global priorities. Look at where we are, understand some of the dynamics that we are facing, while at the same time trying to address the differences that we often see in terms of inequalities within the education system. We must also have a global picture so that we can create a particular workforce that will be attractable to global markets because that is very important. We have an issue again in this country of scarce skills. How do we then go about ensuring that those scarce skills are no longer scarce? We have an abundance of those particular skills. And one of the key, again, things that I often say is reconfiguration of our economy. If you look at majority of those who graduate within the field of STEM, majority of them are within the banking sector, even engineers. They are not within engineering. And then we complain and we say there's an engineering issue in South Africa. There's no engineering issue. It's just an issue of incentives because as soon as you graduate, you go where there are more incentives. How do we then incentivize people to remain engineers within the public space so that they can address some of the infrastructure challenges that we are facing in this country? How do we then offer particular incentives to people to go to these public schools, whether they be in rural or in urban areas, so that they can go there and teach mathematics, teach physics, teach science. That on its own is going to improve our educational outcomes. But unless we are able to offer particular incentives that are going to get people to address those, we'll always complain about the very same issue, say we have scarce skills. But at the end of the day, it is just scarcity is man-made. How do we then respond to it? How do we reconfigure it so that it can work best for our national interest?
National interests should be put forward, and we still have another, let's say, 4 years to 5 years till the next elections. What do you think the future of South Africa looks like based on the GNU?
Well, I would say it's pretty hard to predict at the moment, but given some of the developments that are happening, I would say things will get more challenging before they get better, because now is the time whereby a lot of these policies within these parties within the GNU are starting to speak and advocate about their respective policies. But will their respective policies make it to the national agenda? Will it be the policies that are being pursued? For example, as I've indicated, the issue of privatization.
Yes.
Privatization emerges mainly from the DA, but is it necessarily going to be the particular policy standpoint that everyone is looking for? Is it the particular standpoint that the country will take? To what extent will it be taken if it does take? What would be then the responses of the masses to such particular issues? So that is where the main discussions is going to emerge, and that is where most of the challenges are going to emerge. And unless these particular parties are unified within those particular debates and parameters, then we are definitely going to have a lot of upheavals. And it is only, again, the majority of that government of national unity that will determine as to how far can it hold as the glue that is keeping this country together.
Indeed, indeed. And towards the end of our interview, I think it would be unjust for me to finish the interview without also getting a spectacle on the SADC. You know, we are in the SADC region, and policies such as open border policy have been spoken about. We have the PA also anti that. What's your take on that immigration, movement, and the SADC region? How is it benefiting? How is it challenging us?
It's a hugely topical one, and for particular reasons. I mean, even Minister Kotemantashe recently alluded to it and said, even if I go to restaurants, I am not served by South Africans. And that on its own, again, goes back to what I was talking about, the issue of critical skills versus your normal skills. Because in most cases, people from other nations are allowed to work if they bring about critical skills that we do not have in the country, or scarce skills. But if it is then the case that the intermediary skills that are required are also taken by foreign nationals, that presents a challenge in a country whereby we have such a high rate of unemployment. Right? So in as much as we may blame it on many factors, we also need to blame it on the economic structures that we have. What gives particular companies the idea that they are able to employ foreign nationals, particularly illegal nationals, when there are so many South Africans that are unemployed? So there's an issue again that is more about patriotism to your country or patriotism to profits, because the idea is if you are able to employ a foreigner, it means you can pay them a lesser amount because they do not have any bargaining power. But then if you employ a South African, then they do have some sort of bargaining power. They can go to the CCMA, they can go anywhere. So that on its own is going to be one of the mostly contested issues, as we are saying currently. And from where I stand, I think the most important thing is to ensure that people who are coming into the country are people who possess particular skills. Unless in certain exceptional situations whereby we know that people are coming in as asylum seekers. But you've also had a number of cases whereby people are claiming to be in as asylum seekers and then end up being business people in this particular country. And then you ask yourself, what do policies then say within the particular space? So this is definitely one of the most contested issues that needs to be addressed. And again, these are things, because for me, there are certain quarters of society and within the international space that are trying to make South Africa a model or a case study or even, I do not want to call it a guinea pig,
Okay.
but even a particular case whereby we say we want to learn how society will function if we do A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
Because it is only in South Africa whereby such policies are being spoken about, whereby such policies are being piloted. Not anywhere.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't go to Zimbabwe without your passport.
Yes.
You'll be kicked out. You can't go to Swaziland. You'll be dealt with.
Yeah.
You can't go to Nigeria. You'll be dealt with. But it is only South Africa, because of this cosmopolitan idea of a society, that there is this idea that keeps on saying, let's pilot on South Africa and see what a cosmopolitan society would likely look like. But to what benefit?
Yeah.
Who are the main benefits? Because at the end of the day, if you are piloting on a country that is functional, a country that is able to create employment, then you know that you are likely to have these fragmentations that we are seeing in this country that can be xenophobic at times. So those are some of the things that we really need to address.
Yeah, and are there any case studies maybe that we can adopt a few policies? Because I'm speaking that based on the UK policies on immigration, you know, they base it on how you're saying skills. You come through with skill, but however, once you have skill, they also have the taxes. You also contribute to the well-being. I heard that the education system, you can have a school, just need a registration of proof of address. You take a child to school because you're a taxpayer, and your child is also eligible to have free education based on the taxes. So people that are coming from other countries can contribute to the growth of the economy. So are there maybe case studies similar to that we can maybe look into to take what works for us as a country and as a southern region country? Are there case studies?
There are some case studies, but then if you look at them, it's based on a needs basis as well.
Okay.
For example, if you go to your Scandinavian countries, they face a larger population on their side being the elderly. So then they like to attract people within the working age to come to those particular countries, get employed and contribute to their safety net, because that is how they keep on the welfare system going. But if then you get into a case of which they've been mainly in, whereby you have a lot of your people being older than the generation that is required to be within the labor force, then it means you can't sustain this welfare system, right? So such countries have been able then to be inviting, but then again, it was also based on skills. Canada is inviting, but it is based on skills. Japan is doing the same thing, but it is also based on skills. So at the end of the day, it is about what you can contribute to the skills, to the development of this particular country. The same thing that's in terms of making an easy case. Same thing that we see in football. Whether it is in Spain, it is in France, it is in the UK. It is about what skills do you have that will contribute to the growth of football in those particular countries. And we've seen it is these skills that have improved the competitiveness of these particular countries. But then within these skills, again, it is not based on a debate on who's illegal or legal in this country. It is mainly about people who are here legally and with skills. So there is the same thing that we can then attribute to the kind of society that we are trying to create.
That really opened my mind, you know, especially coming from the Euros now, and you know the news that have came out, the Argentinians and all that, the engagement around that, it really speak more on skills and which we should focus on as a country.
Definitely.
Oh, thank you, Prof. Well, lastly, promise is my last question, but this one is an open question to perhaps a person who's watching us. So that is your camera. Word of motivation. We call it Monday Motivation. A person who's watching us now, whether in the context of understanding the change, whether contributing to the country, what is your message to a person that is watching us now?
If there's one particular message that I have, I think it's something. It's based on a movie that I recently watched. It's called The Hitman on Netflix. It's about a boring professor, quite boring, I must say. But then he also has a side gig with the FBI, and he gets to work underground, basically undercover, trying to catch people who are looking for assassins. And then through that particular case, he's able then to go in undercover. And as he's in undercover, he starts developing a new personality, a personality that he's never had before. And then he becomes someone who's exciting, people want to engage with him. And then at the end, he ends up succeeding and becoming this new version of himself. And for me, I think the key lesson there was you can become anyone that you want to become. The issue of self-identity should not always be imposed on you, but you can define who you are, you can define what is it that you want in life, and then you can go out there and get whatever you want. I mean, I'd even make a particular example because I related to it.
Yeah.
Before 2013 or 2014,
Yeah.
I was so shy, I couldn't even speak in class.
Yeah.
And today I'm able to stand in class and teach confidently without any nerves.
Yeah.
And it shows that had I decided to get stuck in the past in terms of that personality that I had,
Yeah.
I would still be there. But then I chose to evolve and become the person that I wanted to in order for me to make particular leaps in life.
Yeah.
So definitely, I'd say that's the one key thing that I would say, that whatever you do, you can become whoever you want to become, and do your best to become the best version of yourself.
Wow. That
Thank
hit me. Because I can't even believe that you didn't, there was a time where you couldn't stand in front of people, because right now you made me nervous throughout most of this interview.
Come on now.
Well, Prof, thank you so much for sharing your insights, and I've learned a lot personally.
No, thanks a lot, Mzilakati, for the invitation, and it's been great, and I also look forward to seeing you guys more often.
Definitely.
Thank
you have
you.
our view as well. So
No,
we're going to see
definitely,
you
I'm
more
enjoying
often.
this view.
Well,
Yeah.
there you have it, dear viewers. Prof. Isaac Khambule came to join me as we were talking more about what's happening in our country and also looking at what's happening in a global perspective. I got to learn a lot about the current state of the country. But the key thing that for you that can be inspirational is that you are in a state of becoming. You can become who you want to be. Just work towards it, skill yourself, and position yourself. My name is Moane Mngube. See you on the next episode.